How to Succeed with Zero Support, The Dark Wisdom of Machiavelli. There is a particular kind of pain that nobody talks about enough. It is not the pain of failure. It is not the pain of loss. It is the pain of looking around at the most important moment of your life, when your dream is right in front of you, when everything you have worked for is finally within reach, and realizing that no one is standing beside you. No cheerleader, no mentor, no family member saying they believe in you, no friend willing to take the risk with you. Just you, alone, with a vision that feels too big for one person to carry and no one else willing to help you carry it. If you have ever felt that, if you are feeling it right now, then this video was made for you. Because 500 years ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli wrote the most honest, most ruthless, most misunderstood guide to succeeding in a world that will not help you. A world where support is conditional, where loyalty is temporary, where the people you expected to show up simply do not, and where waiting for them to show up will cost you everything. Machiavelli did not write for the comfortable. He wrote for the ones who had nothing and still refused to quit. He wrote for the ones who had been abandoned, betrayed, and left to figure it out alone, and who were determined to figure it out anyway. Today, we are going to walk through his most powerful teachings on how to succeed with zero support. This is not inspiration. This is strategy. This is the cold, clear, life-changing wisdom of a man who lost everything and still managed to write something that outlasted every king, every pope, and every empire of his time. And if this kind of content is what you need right now, subscribe to this channel before this video ends. Every week, we bring you the deepest, most powerful wisdom from history's greatest minds. Practical, honest, unfiltered, built for people who are building alone. Let's go. The man who had nothing left. To understand why Machiavelli's wisdom on succeeding without support is so powerful, you need to understand what he personally survived. He was not a comfortable philosopher theorizing from a position of safety. He was a man who had served the Florentine Republic faithfully for 14 years, as a diplomat, a senior official, a trusted advisor. He had sat across the table from popes and kings. He had negotiated with Cesare Borgia, one of the most dangerous men in Europe. He had given his best years to an institution he genuinely believed in. And then, in 1512, the Medici returned to power. In a single day, everything Machiavelli had built was gone. He was removed from office. He was arrested. He was accused of conspiracy and tortured. When they finally released him, he was exiled to a small farm outside Florence with no income, no influence, no allies willing to risk themselves for him, and no path back to the life he had known. He was 53 years old. His career was over. His network had evaporated. The people he had served had either abandoned him or were powerless to help him. He was, by every conventional measure, finished. And in that place of total isolation, with no support, no resources, no guarantee that anything he produced would ever be read, he wrote The Prince. One of the most influential books in human history. A book that has shaped the thinking of leaders, generals, presidents, and visionaries for 5 centuries. He succeeded with zero support. And he left behind the exact blueprint for how he did it. The first truth: no one is coming. Before any strategy, before any technique, before any mindset shift, there is a truth that Machiavelli places at the very foundation of everything he teaches. A truth so simple and so brutal that most people spend their entire lives running from it. No one is coming. Not your family. Not your friends. Not the mentor you have been waiting for. Not the investor who will finally see your vision. Not the colleague who will advocate for you in the room you are not in. Not the partner who will show up exactly when you need them with exactly what you need. Machiavelli did not say this to be cruel. He said it because he had watched, across decades of political life at the highest levels, what happened to people who built their survival on the expectation of support. He wrote that a prince who relies entirely on the goodwill of others stands neither firm nor safe. He observed that men will help you when helping you costs them nothing, and abandon you the moment it does. This is not a condemnation of humanity. People are not evil for protecting themselves. People are not villains for prioritizing their own survival. They are simply human. And a person who understands human nature, who has genuinely absorbed what Machiavelli observed and documented, will never again be devastated by the discovery that someone chose themselves over you. Because you will have already built yourself a foundation that does not require them. The shift from, "Why won't anyone help me?" to, "How do I build this without them?" is not a shift into bitterness. It is a shift into power. It is the moment your life actually begins. Build on your own arms, not the goodwill of others. Machiavelli returns to this image again and again throughout The Prince. He calls it the difference between your own arms and borrowed arms. And he is unambiguous about which one can actually sustain you. He writes that the one who stands with the arms of others will never stand firm or secure. Because borrowed strength has conditions. Hired loyalty has a price. Support that comes from someone else's generosity can be withdrawn at any moment, and usually is, precisely when you need it most. Your own arms are different. Your own arms are the skills you have developed so deeply that no one can take them from you. The knowledge you have accumulated through years of real experience. The discipline you have built through showing up alone, repeatedly, when no one was watching and no one was applauding. The internal resources, resilience, creativity, focus, endurance, that belong entirely to you because you forged them yourself. Think about the difference between two people starting a business. The first relies on a wealthy family member to fund it, a well-connected friend to open doors, and a mentor to guide every decision. The second builds with whatever they have, learning finance by doing it, building connections by earning them, making decisions by thinking them through alone. When the first person loses their support, and eventually they have no idea how to function without it. When the second person gains support, and eventually they will too, it accelerates something already strong. Machiavelli would bet on the second person every single time, not because suffering is noble, but because the person who has learned to stand alone has developed something that cannot be borrowed, bought, or taken away. They have built their own arms. And those arms will hold when everything else falls. Use the absence as advantage. Here is the insight that separates Machiavelli's thinking from simple resilience advice. He does not just say survive the absence of support. He says use it. When Cesare Borgia, one of Machiavelli's most studied figures, was building his power base in central Italy, he was surrounded by people who wanted him to fail. His father, Pope Alexander, would eventually die and leave him exposed. His allies were unreliable. His enemies were numerous and well-resourced. By any conventional analysis, his position was weak. But Borgia understood something that Machiavelli documented carefully. The absence of easy support forced him to build something more durable than easy support ever produces. He had to earn every alliance by making himself genuinely valuable. He had to develop his own military capability rather than depending on mercenaries who could be bought away. He had to think more carefully, move more strategically, and build more deeply than his better supported competitors, because he had no margin for the laziness that comfort produces. You have the same advantage right now. The person who has a safety net does not learn to walk the tightrope. They have no reason to, but you, building without support, without the cushion of other people's resources, without the luxury of failure being painless, you are developing a precision and a strength that the comfortable will never possess. Your limitation is your laboratory. The constraint of having no one to rely on forces you to become someone who does not need to rely on anyone. And when you finally get there, when you look back at the version of you that had nothing, you will understand that the absence was not the obstacle. The absence was the training. Master the art of strategic patience. One of the most misread aspects of Machiavelli's philosophy is the assumption that he advocated for aggression and speed above all else. He did not. What he advocated for was the right action at the right moment, which sometimes means moving swiftly and decisively, and sometimes means waiting with a patience so disciplined it looks, from the outside, like stillness. He observed that fortune is a woman, and if you wish to keep her under control, you must beat and bully her. But he also observed that poorly timed boldness destroys more people than caution ever did. The key was reading the moment correctly, understanding when the conditions were ripe for action and when they were not, and having the self-mastery to wait when waiting was the wiser move. For the person building without support, this is everything. Because the temptation when you are alone is to rush, to prove, as quickly as possible, that you were right. To silence the doubters, to demonstrate your worth, to make something happen before your own resolve weakens. That urgency is understandable, but it will cost you. Machiavelli would tell you this: use the waiting period to become unignorable. Every day that passes without support is a day you can spend building something that, when the moment finally arrives, will be impossible to dismiss. Develop the skill further. Understand the landscape more deeply. Build the foundation more solidly, so that when you move, you do not move prematurely into a position you cannot hold. You move from a position of such quiet, accumulated strength that the outcome is nearly certain before you even begin. Strategic patience is not passive. It is one of the most active, demanding disciplines a person can practice. It requires you to keep believing, keep building, keep preparing, without the validation of visible progress, without the encouragement of supporters, without any external confirmation that what you are doing matters. It matters. Keep going. Control your narrative before others do. Machiavelli was deeply aware of something that most people learn too late. In the absence of your own story, other people will write one for you. And they will not be generous. He wrote that appearances matter enormously in the exercise of power. Not because reality does not matter, but because most people never access reality directly. They access the version of reality that is communicated to them. And the person who controls that communication controls what others believe is true. When you are building without support, you are vulnerable to narrative. The people who did not believe in you, who did not show up, who chose not to help, they are not neutral observers of your journey. They have a stake, conscious or not, in the version of your story that says you will fail. Because your success would raise uncomfortable questions about their choice not to support you. Machiavelli's answer is to be deliberate, proactive, and strategic about how you present yourself and your work to the world. Not through dishonesty, not through inflation or fabrication, but through intentional, consistent communication of your vision, your progress, and your purpose. Document what you are building. Share it, speak about it with the confidence of someone who already knows the outcome. Not because you are performing confidence you do not feel, but because you have decided that the story of your eventual success begins with how you carry yourself today. In the absence of champions, be your own champion. Not arrogantly, but clearly, boldly, with the kind of quiet, consistent self-advocacy that Machiavelli observed in every leader who survived long enough to be remembered. Your narrative is a resource. Build it as deliberately as you build everything else. Choose your battles with surgical precision. One of the most practically powerful teachings in all of The Prince, and one of the most applicable to the person building alone, is Machiavelli's relentless emphasis on the conservation and concentration of resources. He wrote that the wise leader does not fight every battle. They choose the battles they can win, secure those wins completely, and use the strength gained from each victory to position themselves for the next. Fighting battles you cannot win does not demonstrate courage. It depletes the resources, energy, time, credibility, focus, that you need for the battles that actually matter. For the person building without a support system, this is not optional wisdom. It is survival strategy. You do not have the luxury of wasted effort. You cannot afford to pour your energy into opportunities that will not move you forward, into relationships that drain without replenishing, into arguments that satisfy your ego but damage your position. Every ounce of what you have is a strategic asset, and Machiavelli would demand that you treat it like one. This means saying no, clearly and often, to things that feel urgent but are not important. It means identifying the 1, 2, or 3 things that will genuinely change your situation if you do them excellently, and doing those things with everything you have while letting lesser things go undone. It means resisting the social pressure to prove yourself in arenas that do not matter, to people whose opinion will not change your trajectory, through battles that will cost you more than any victory could possibly return. Concentrate your force. Machiavelli observed that a smaller army with superior focus and positioning defeats a larger army every time. You are not outgunned. You are outnumbered, and that means your advantage is precision, not volume. Use it, build alliances from strength, not desperation. Here is one of the most nuanced teachings in Machiavelli's entire body of work, and one that the person building alone desperately needs to understand. He did not say avoid alliances. He said never enter an alliance from a position of desperation. Because desperate alliances produce one outcome with stunning consistency. The person with less need extracts value from the person with more need, and the desperate person, grateful for any support, accepts terms that damage them in the long run. Machiavelli observed that the prince who causes another to become powerful brings about his own ruin. Because that newly powerful ally will eventually no longer need you. And the moment they no longer need you, the foundation of your alliance disappears. The counterintuitive truth, and this is deeply Machiavellian, is that the time to build alliances is not when you need them. It is before you need them. It is when you have something genuine to offer. When you are operating from a position of strength, capability, and value, not from a position of lack. This means your first priority, building alone, is to become so genuinely valuable that alliances seek you rather than you desperately seeking them. Build the skill. Build the track record. Build the reputation. Create real, demonstrable value in the world. And watch how differently people engage with you when you are offering something versus when you are asking for something. This does not mean isolation. It does not mean pride. It means the deep, practical wisdom of understanding that the best negotiating position is never desperation, and that the person who builds their own value first will always make better alliances, on better terms, with better outcomes, than the person who reaches for help before they have anything to offer in return. Adapt or become irrelevant. Machiavelli wrote that the person who adapts their approach to the demands of the times will flourish, and the person who does not will fail. He considered this one of the deepest truths he had ever observed about the difference between those who succeeded and those who were destroyed by circumstances that others navigated successfully. For the person building without support, this capacity for adaptation is not just an advantage. It is a lifeline, because building alone means you will face unexpected obstacles with no one to help you think through them. You will hit walls that your plan did not account for. You will run out of a resource you depended on. You will discover that the path you were on has closed, and that you must find another one, immediately, with whatever you have. The person who is rigidly attached to a single strategy, a single vision of how things must unfold, a single definition of what success looks like, that person breaks under that pressure. Because reality does not care about your plan. Reality will bend your plan into shapes you never imagined, and demand that you respond. The person who adapts, who holds the destination firmly while remaining utterly flexible about the route, is the person who arrives. Machiavelli admired this quality above almost everything else. He called it virtue. Not virtue in the moral sense, but a combination of skill, force of will, creativity, and the fierce adaptability of a person who refuses to be stopped by any single obstacle because they always find another way forward. You have that. Maybe you have not had a reason to know it yet. But the moment support disappears and you keep going anyway, that is virtue. That is the thing Machiavelli spent his entire life studying and documenting. And it lives in you. The compounding power of showing up alone. There is something that happens to a person who keeps showing up with no support, no validation, no external confirmation that they are on the right path. Something that cannot be taught in a classroom, cannot be developed in comfort, cannot be given to you by any mentor or champion no matter how generous they are. They become unshakable, not invincible, not immune to pain or doubt or the very human moments of wondering whether any of this is worth it, but unshakable in the deep, foundational sense. They have proven to themselves, through repeated action in the face of repeated uncertainty, that they do not need conditions to be perfect in order to move forward. That they do not need permission. That they do not need applause. That they are fully capable of being the one who keeps going when every reasonable person would have stopped. Machiavelli never used the language of inspiration. He was not that kind of writer. But embedded in every observation, every case study, every hard truth in The Prince, is a deep respect for this quality. For the person who faces impossible conditions and keeps building anyway. He documented Cesare Borgia not because Borgia was admirable in a moral sense. He was not, in many respects, but because Borgia demonstrated what it looks like to keep building under conditions of maximum uncertainty, maximum opposition, and minimal guaranteed support. That relentlessness was what Machiavelli found worthy of study. Every day you show up alone as a deposit. You may not see the account balance growing. You may not feel the interest accumulating. But it is, and the day will come, and it will come, when the compound interest of all those invisible deposits becomes something the world cannot ignore. A final word. Machiavelli died waiting for recognition that never came in his lifetime. The Florence he loved never called him back. The princes he hoped to serve never read his words in time. He spent his final years farming a small plot of land, writing letters to friends who were still inside the world of power he had been shut out of, dreaming of a return that would never happen. And yet, 500 years later, his name is taught in every university on earth. His ideas have shaped presidents, generals, CEOs, and revolutionaries. The book he wrote in exile, with no support, no resources, no guarantee that anyone would ever read it, is one of the most read, most discussed, most argued over texts in human history. He succeeded with zero support, not despite the absence of it through it, because the exile forced him to distill everything he had ever observed, learned, and understood into its purest and most honest form. There was no audience to perform for, no patron to impress, no political calculation to make. Just a man, alone, writing the truth as he understood it. That is what zero support can produce in the hands of someone who refuses to let it stop them. You are that person. You would not be here, watching this, searching for the wisdom to keep going, if you were not already that person. Something in you refuses to quit. Something in you keeps looking for the path forward even when the path is not clear. That is not nothing. That is everything. Build with it, build from it. Build until the day arrives, and it will arrive, when the world looks at what you made alone and cannot believe a single person did that without help. You will smile, because you will know something they do not. You did not succeed in spite of having no support. You succeeded because of what having no support made you become. If this video reached something in you, if it gave words to something you have been feeling but could not name, then this channel exists for you. Subscribe right now. Hit that notification bell, because every single week, we go deep into the most powerful, most honest, most practical wisdom from history's greatest minds: Machiavelli, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Sun Tzu, and beyond. No fluff, no empty motivation, just the real thinking that builds real people. You are not alone in building alone. This channel walks with you. Subscribe. Let's build together.